Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path podcast. I'm your host, Liv, and welcome to another solo episode. So, I'm excited to get into today's episode, which is going to be all around home environment. The reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because it is something that I noticed as a theme that was coming up with a lot of my clients time and time again. We were talking about health, we were talking about habits, we were talking about mindset, and home always seemed to be a goal for a lot of people. One of the 12 aspects of holistic health that we look at is home environment. And so, even just when I was starting to ask my clients questions about how their home environment felt, did it feel aligned to their habits? Was there something they wanted to shift to make it feel more like a sanctuary or just more of a match to what they were also trying to bring into their lives? And home kept coming up for so many people, for so many programs. And so today I wanted to share a little bit about how to adjust your home, how to make little simple shifts in your home environment to align it to your habits and to your goals. So, I wanted to start off with sharing a quote that for me really landed so hard when I read it for the first time. It's from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And when I read this quote, I remember I highlighted it, circled it, like it really, really landed for me as to why home was such a big topic for me in my programs and why it kept coming up for people as we talked about habits. So I'll share with you what the quote is here. Be the architect of your environment, not the victim. Designing your environment is one of the biggest factors in habit forming. People choose things not because of what they are, but mostly because of where they are. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Therefore, if we want to make a habit a larger part of your life, form your environment to do so by making the cue a part of your environment. It's easy to not read if the bookshelf is in the corner of the guest room, and it's easy to not eat your fruits if they are hidden in the bottom drawer of your fridge. Think of your objects or furniture as a relationship rather than things. So, as I mentioned, that's from James Clear from Atomic Habits. If you haven't read the book, highly recommend it. And thinking about how our environment shapes our choices, right? It's as simple as that. What you're seeing, what you're making obvious, what you have around you is impacting the choices that you're making. And you can either use that for the good of your choices, for example, your healthy lifestyle habits, but you can also flip that around and notice how it impacts you potentially on the not so healthy side of things. And so I wanted to share a few things today about not only how you view your environment, but just some practical things that you can think of. My hope is that you leave this episode with a list of some ideas of things you want to try and things that just getting re inspired to look at your home in a slightly different way. So, the first question I invite you to think about is, what are your current habit goals? So, before you even look at your home and start rearranging or decluttering or getting bags out to donate, coming back to what are your actual goals, right? What are the things that you want to be doing in your home? For example, if making your bed every morning is a top goal of yours, how can you adjust and shape your bedroom to be designed for that, right? If drinking water or having tea or having your morning drink of choice first thing in the morning is your goal, how do you align and design your kitchen for that? And then finally, for example, if you want to go to the gym after work, some spaces that might be impacted there would be things like your closet, potentially your car, right? So when we think about environment, yes, we're talking about home, but we're also thinking about car as well because we're in our car so much. It is our second home of where we're getting from point A to point B. So as you think about that, what are my current goals? What are the spaces that actually align to those goals? You'll start to create this map of different spaces in your house where you have not only high traffic where you're constantly going into, but also what are the highest impact spaces that you have. So for a lot of people, and we'll talk about this in a little bit as well, the kitchen is a huge part of a lot of habits. The bedroom is a huge part of a lot of habits. If you have a home office, that might be a place with a lot of habits. And so just noticing what parts of your house are like high impact for the habits that you have. Secondly, doing a space audit. So, what I'd love to do with my clients is really determine what needs to happen because it's not the same thing for everyone in every space. So, the three potential things that you could need to do in a space would be declutter, which is a huge piece, a huge popular thing that people have to do, right? You are not necessarily rearranging or redesigning, but you're really focusing on letting stuff go. And so I remember listening to a webinar all about home environment, and the teacher had shared two questions that you should ask yourself when you are decluttering. And it's, do you love it? Yes or no? And then the second one is, do you use it? Yes or no? Because you can have things that you love, but you don't use. And you can have things that you don't love, right? And that you know that those need to part. So if you have a don't love, don't use, that's a reason to let it go. If you have a love it, but don't use, maybe that goes in a second pile. So one of the things that I recommend to a lot of my clients is it can be hard to part ways with certain things, right? And that's why people typically hold on to things for a long time because there's an emotional tie to it or there's an identity tie to it. So just even knowing that it's not so easy just to put things in a bag and take them to Goodwill or wherever you're donating them. It can be an unraveling process of starting to think about letting go of it, putting it in a bag, sitting with it, then taking it, right? It doesn't come so easy to everyone. And so, one thing that has helped me in my own decluttering process is simply just having three piles. It's the yes, this is like definitely going to keep. No, this is definitely going to go. So that would be the don't love, don't use pile. And then there is a middle pile. The middle pile is things that you haven't quite made a decision on and you're not quite ready to make a decision on. And that's okay to come back to that pile at a later date. What I have found in my experience is when you start to at least know this is a no, this is my no pile, and start to get those things out, it becomes lighter. You start to see the change right away because the space is just a little bit more open, or you have more space in your closet, or whatever it is that you're decluttering. And it gives you some instant motivation when you see the progress of like, okay, I got these things out. Let's go back to that pile when I have another, time or energy for it. And so noticing what's coming up for you around decluttering, maybe starting off with just those questions. Do you love it? Do you use it? And then sitting with that third pile for a little bit longer if you need to. One tip that came to me, actually listening to a podcast that I have used and still use today, is for that no pile or for that maybe pile, I will sit with it for maybe a few weeks, even maybe if it feels good, a few months. And if I haven't even thought about what's in that bag, if I haven't even gone in there to look for anything, I know that in a few weeks, I just let it go, right? Because I'm not thinking about it. I didn't think I could, I need something in the bag. And so if you do need that sort of halfway point between having it, letting it go, like, and having it even just sit for a week, that can be supportive for you just to show you like it's okay. You probably don't need it because you don't even think about it. The second type of thing that might need to happen if it's not a declutter, right, or even after a declutter, is designing and decorating, which is a really fun part of the process, but does require you to be in a place where you can maybe invest in a couple new pieces for your home, or financially be able to design and decorate. So in the absence of that, decluttering is a really easy, free thing that you can do to already shift the environment in your house. However, if you are at the point where you're like, I need to change some things up in here, designing and decorating is a really fun place to be. And there can be really simple shifts made to your space that align to your habits, that also just align to your joy. So, in my opinion, three things that you can think about with designing and decorating that I think are a little underrated is, first of all, just making sure you have the right storage for things. For example, having bins, having shelves, having crates, having whatever it is that you use to store things that don't need to be in sight. In my opinion, and a lot of my clients, a big goal of theirs is just to have this sort of clean, minimal, calm sanctuary. And when you can see everything you own, it kind of takes away from that. So being able to have storage for the things that you don't need to see, even things on your desk, right? Having things with drawers, having things where you don't need to see everything that you own. You get to choose and decide what it is that's actually going to be joyful for you to see. The other thing that I think is very underrated, but can have the opportunity to just reshift your entire space is lighting. Anyone here who is listening knows the power of when you go into a space that has really great lighting, whether it's low lighting or warm lighting. And for me, I'm really sensitive to lighting in places. Hence, for all of my events, I'm always like turning off the lights and doing my own up lighting because I know that lighting is such a key piece of the ambiance and the mood and the vibe. So even just changing out some light bulbs to warmer lighting, maybe it's getting a certain type of light that really matches the feel of the space that you're in. Lighting is just a really easy key way that you can change and shift a space without that much money. And then finally, plants, right? Bringing in life into your spaces. It could be fake plants, could be real plants, but having just some greenery, right? Bringing a little bit of the outdoors indoors. Bringing in things that make you happy, bringing in joy into your space. I was working with a client that was redesigning their space, and they even had they ended up bringing in some little fountain in their house, just to hear the water. It was a really small one, but just wanting to hear that sound of the water in the background in her house or in her office. And I was like, that's an amazing idea, right? Of bringing the elements of nature into your house. So after thinking of your goals, I invite you to really think based off the places that have the highest traffic impact in your house that are related to the most habits. What needs to happen? Is it a declutter? Is it a design? Is it a rearrange? Sometimes you just need to rearrange your space. I don't know about any of you listening, but for me, I was always rearranging my space as a kid. I was always moving the bed to another place. I was always redecorating my bedroom as a child. And so bringing some of that into adulthood, right? And when you walk into your door of your room, of your bedroom, of your kitchen, whatever room you're going into, how can you adjust maybe what the focal point is? For example, when you walk in, do you automatically see the couch is the place to go and relax? Or is it you're walking into a bookshelf, or you're walking into something that's not super spacious? And so thinking about what potentially needs to shift, a lot can happen in a space when you just move things around, right? Move the couch, move the chair, move the table, just give a little bit of fresh life into it. And then for your space audit, I'd also invite you to think about what kind of systems can you create for yourself. And I've been super inspired by James Clear and Atomic Habits and just creating systems, right? How do we create our habits and create systems around our habits so that it just becomes the most obvious and the most natural thing to do? So an example of this is when when you walk into your door at your house, what are the first things that are there? Do you have a little bowl where you put your keys? Do you have a little bench where you put, your bag, or a shoe rack to put your shoes? What is the process of using your space and using the things in your space so that it's clear, so that it's calm, so that there's a place for everything? You can think about this even with your laundry, right? If you struggle with putting your laundry away, what is your system for not only when you do laundry, but what is the process for actually putting it away? Is there a really clear way for you to have the laundry right, after drying it onto hangers? Or what is your system for your clothes? So these are just some little seeds to plant, to think about, how do I create this process and this flow within my home space that is aligning to the goals, that is aligning to the habits that I have. All right. So I talk a little bit about Keystone habits. I talk a lot about Keystone habits actually in my programs, which are basically these habits that have a ripple effect, right? Where you have a habit, for example, like exercise as a Keystone habit, movement. When you start moving your body, there are all of these positive ripple effects that happen as a result. So you might start thinking about your food a little bit more in order to have energy. You might have better sleep, you have more energy, and then that creates this whole ripple effect. I really believe the same thing happens with spaces, right? These keystone spaces, that if you have these spaces optimized, ripple effects happen with all of your habits at home. And in my opinion, the three keystone spaces that you can work with in your home, which mostly every home has, is your bedroom, your kitchen, and your closet. Because these are places that you're spending a lot of time, but that also touch a lot of habits. For example, bedroom touches so many habits. Winding down, maybe it's how you're spending your morning and your rising ritual, your wind down rituals. People wanting to have their bedroom be just this calm, safe space for sleeping. And so optimizing your bedroom is a huge keystone habit, because I believe that sleep is the number one thing that we need to be, focusing on when it comes to all of our lifestyle habits. If we're not sleeping well and we're not rested, the domino effect goes from there, right? So bedroom is a huge one. Kitchen, because a lot of people's habits are related to nourishment in some way, versus whether that's I want to cook more at home, I want to have water with lemon before coffee, whether it's, I want to meal prep, whatever it might be, a lot of habits start in the kitchen. And then finally, closet. I do think that closet is really a keystone space, mainly because of how connected it is to our time, right? Everyone has probably experienced having to get ready in the morning or get ready for something where they have no idea what they're wearing, or their clothes are all over the place, or everything's in laundry baskets, right? So closet, and having an optimized closet, I believe, will really save you time, not only with getting ready in the morning, but also things like working out, right? Do you have all your workout clothes? Do you have all your socks? Do you have all the things that you need to go on a run in a really easy to grab place within your home? There are also some quick win spaces. So if you don't necessarily have the space or energy or time right now to redo your bedroom, or optimize your kitchen, or optimize your closet, I think there are some also quick win spaces that you can touch that you will start to see some traction. And so, in my opinion, those are your fridge. I personally think that the fridge is being able to design your fridge in a way that you open your refrigerator and you are actually happy to see the food that's in your refrigerator is huge. If you type into Pinterest, fridge design, for example, you'll get all the inspiration in the world. All of these beautiful designed refrigerators that are super visually pleasing, but even if you're not doing something like that, which, if you are, amazing, but if you're not, how can you at least just see your food, right? See the food that you have. Again, this goes back to saving money, I think, in that you're not, and nothing's all tucked away in the corner. You're actually able to see what you have for groceries, and actually try to use as much of it as possible. Another one is your nightstand, similar to bedroom. Like, this is like typically the first thing that you either interact with in the morning or at night. Okay? Is your phone plugged in right there and you're trying to limit your screen time? Are you trying to read, but your book's on the other corner of the bedroom? Is your bedside nightstand just a mess? Do you not even have one? Right? So thinking about, what are, for the habits that you have, does the space that you interact with likely first reflect that? And just noticing. And then finally, toiletries. This kind of is similar to the closet. Whatever you're using, whether it's skincare, hair care, makeup, whatever it might be, like, how can you organize it in a way that is easy to use, visually pleasing? And again, the whole thing with home is, how does it represent the calmness, the minimalism, whatever it is that you're going for, the joy? How do you have your space match that? Whatever you're trying to bring in and call in, how do you have your space match that? All right, so we went through quite a bit on this episode, but the overall theme that I want you to think of is, how can your home really be your sanctuary? And when you think of your home as your sanctuary, even just noticing the first couple images that pop up into your mind, right? You might have a super clear vision of what you want your home to be like. Maybe you have a Pinterest board, maybe you've saved some photos on Instagram, or maybe you've even experienced living in a place before where you're like, that was my ideal home environment. Even if you're not in the home itself that you want to be in forever, or even if you are someone that's moving around a lot and there's a lot of transition in your life, there can still be, we can create home wherever we go, right? We can create home wherever we go. We can bring pieces of our home, things that make us feel grounded, feel things that bring us joy into wherever we are. I've worked with a lot of clients who have been in transition of moving or have been traveling for long periods of time. And I love to even think about, how do you set up your hotel room, right, in order to support your habits? How do you set up your in between home while you're finding a new place to support your habits? And so even just thinking about that, right? How do you take home with you, regardless of where you are? And overall, how do you make it the most obvious thing, the most obvious things that you want to be doing in your home? How do you have the space and the design reflect that, right? And that's a huge piece of James Clear's work, is like, make it obvious, right? Make it attractive, make it the natural choice for you to do this habit. And a lot of that comes down to home. So with that, I would love to hear if you have any reflections, if this episode is resonating with you. Send me a DM, send me an email, connect in any way. I would love to hear how you are redesigning and bringing life and joy into your home as a result of your habits and your goals. If you are interested in exploring this topic a little bit deeper, along with all of the other different parts of holistic health, I did want to share that Rise and Align, my 4-month holistic coaching program for women that are interested in redesigning their lifestyle and also creating healthy habits and an aligned lifestyle to match, is opening up in January. Again, enrollment will be open in December. And if you are interested and you're listening to this podcast, there's a special bonus if you apply and you note down this episode in your application. So mention that you heard about the program on the Illuminated Path podcast, and I have a special early bird bonus for people who want to jump into the program in January. That being said, I look forward to connecting with you all in the next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.